This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Coming up on The Payoff, Christian Countzler is the CEO of Stable Recovery. We're talking about addicts in recovery working with thoroughbreds in Lexington, Kentucky. It's an amazing way for these young men to recover, and it's an amazing program and an amazing story of recovery that Christian talks to us about. He's a guy who was a talented young man, got a scholarship to Western Kentucky, ended up experiencing cocaine and alcohol for the first time in college, coming out of an abusive family, and was still found a way to be successful for a decade or so, all the while carrying this incredible addiction on his back. Ended up in a homeless encampment on the banks of the Ohio River, thinking about suicide, a full-blown heroin addict. And in between there's cocaine, alcohol, opioids. And after that, this was amazing recovery, where this guy is now letting the sunlight of the Spirit, as I like to say, work through him, and he's saving lives through Stable Recovery. It's an awesome program you got to hear about, and this is an awesome story. But first, Kevin Souza. All right, so right now you are at Stable Recovery. You're in Lexington. Now,
yes.
Reading about your story, Christian, I saw you prior to this experience at Stable Recovery, you didn't have a ton of experiences with horses, but you had a lot of experience with addiction. So
Plenty of experience, yeah. Over 20 years of experience with addiction and zero experience with horses.
So I want to get it. That's the magic of recovery, right? Now you're sober and you're running a place called Stable Recovery.
It is.
So you grew up where?
I grew up in Western Kentucky,
Okay.
small town called Greenville, one stoplight town. Grew up in poverty with an addicted father who was abusive. It's kind of unfortunately, kind of the stereotypical story of someone who turns to addiction later on in life. But that's I had a really tough childhood, obviously kind of ventured towards drugs and alcohol later on in life. I did not use drugs or alcohol in high school. I saw what it did to my dad, and it scared me. So I smoked a little pot and maybe had a few beers at parties, more to fit in than anything else. But then I went to college and was introduced to cocaine, and all of a sudden, everything that all the fear, all of the awkwardness, all of that went away. And I felt like I was whole. I didn't mind what I saw in the mirror. I tell people, I speak at a lot of different treatment centers and AA meetings and stuff like that. And I can remember being a little guy, man, and not liking what I saw in the mirror. There was something inside of me that just felt out of place, man. And so it wasn't until I found drugs and alcohol that I was okay with me again, and that turned into a long love affair after that.
Man, I can so relate. You talk about, first of all, it sounds like, and I guess I'll ask you the question, was there addiction in your family outside of your dad? Like, did you see it like, okay, you said you were scared.
I was scared. My dad was super violent, so that was a lot of it. But no, other than my father, there wasn't a lot of addiction in my family. I had a mother who loved me as hard as any mom would love her son. She did her best to protect me from dad. But she was about 4'11", 5 foot. And my dad was kind of a big guy. So, once I got big enough to fight back in the family, that's what I did. So I kind of became the protector. And that consumed a lot of my childhood was protecting mom and little sister from dad. Dad would disappear, would go out on runs and do what he does. But it was when he came home, I think he had run out of whatever it was he was doing at that time. He was super angry and he was super violent. And so it was, I couldn't have friends over because I didn't know how he would act. It was a traumatic childhood, so I worked really, really hard in high school to get the hell out of that. And so I got good grades, and I was on all the sports teams and did what I had to do. And was able to earn a scholarship to Western Kentucky University. And I thought that would be my solution. I thought, man, this is all I need to do is get out of this little town and get away from that situation. But I got to college and I still didn't fit in. I still wasn't comfortable in my own skin until that night at a fraternity party when I walked in a buddy's room and he had those little white lines chopped out on a dresser. And that, man, it just solved everything. It was my solution, and it worked for a long time. It really did.
Like athletes that are addicted, that's like a sweet spot for me, especially when you get to the recovery. When you were in high school and you started to realize, you were good as an athlete, what did that do for you, and when did you realize that?
Well, I was a pretty good baseball player. I was on all the all-star teams, and we traveled quite a bit. We were a small town, but we played a lot of baseball. But being from Kentucky, I grew up wanting to be a basketball player, and so I got into high school and tried out for the basketball team, made the basketball team. So I kind of gave up on baseball. Baseball was easy to me, and I just kind of gave up on it. So I kind of focused on basketball. I remember going to Rick Pitino's basketball camp as a freshman, and I got to start on that team. And the problem was I was 5'7" and slow. So as far as a future in basketball, that wasn't. But you couldn't tell me that. I was gonna try to make something of myself. And so basketball was kind of my escape. It's a big deal here in Kentucky, obviously, and so I did pretty good with that for a while, but near my senior year, I'm one of these guys that if I'm not the best, I don't want to play, and coming towards my senior year of high school, a younger guy who ended up playing for the University of Kentucky beat me out for my spot. And so I gave up on that. I quit my senior year, and that's been kind of a theme in my life for a long time, that if I wasn't the best, I'm just not going to participate. And it wasn't until I found recovery and sobriety and became okay with myself that I realized you're not going to be the best at everything you do, and you don't have to be the best at everything you do. But on the flip side of that, it's kind of driven me to build stable recovery, and I'm still a super driven individual. I wake up and I always feel like the world is collapsing. I'm not doing enough, so I kind of use that in recovery to find some success, and we've been very successful so far. So I'm really grateful for that, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you guys create like a peer-driven support group, and that's sort of like a team, right? For me, I always say, recovery meetings, it's the best locker room I've ever been in. Everybody understands everybody else's role, and it's almost like it's like chop wood, carry water. The team is really, really focused on keeping the main thing, and that is sobriety. Back to your addiction. So by the way, who was the guy that beat you out that went to Kentucky?
Patrick Sparks.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were some incredible teams, dude.
They were.
Yeah.
They were. That was when things were good back in Kentucky. We've struggled recently, but we're going to get back there.
You excited to have Mark Pope back?
I am excited. He was a really special player for us. He was a team leader. He's passionate about, bleeding blue. And so, yeah, we're excited about it. Now we just got to get some players around him. I think we'll be successful again.
Look at this. You're no nonsense. You're a real Wildcat fan. Okay, I want to talk about, you get to Western Kentucky, and when did you have your first beer in college?
Basically the first night, and again, that was more trying to fit in with what was going on. That's what you did. Western Kentucky was kind of a party school anyway. So, we moved into the dorms, and then we went out and found a party that night. And, I didn't know at the time, but I drank out alcoholically from the very beginning. I was a blackout drinker. I didn't have any quit in me at all. It was drink until you puke, drink until you black out, drink until you end up in handcuffs, type drinker. Many, many mornings I woke up and had no idea where I had been or what I had done, and that was scary, but it obviously wasn't scary enough to keep me from doing it the next day. And as later on in life, you find out that that's an alcoholic. That's, where normal people wake up and can't remember the night before. That it scares the hell out of them, and it should. But guys like me, I want to do it again, and let's take it even further the next night.
How long after when you started to drink that you started to use cocaine?
It was almost in tandem,
Wow.
because of, like I said, I didn't drink much in high school, so I'm drinking to get drunk in college. And that's how my buddy pulled me into his room. He was like, "Man, I got something that will help you drink more, will help you, kind of." And so that's kind of how that fit in. So it really kind of started alcoholism and addiction kind of started simultaneously for me. I only made it 3 semesters into college because my addiction got so out of control so fast that I was stealing textbooks to sell back to the bookstore so that I could buy more cocaine. And that's really, I ended up in the military after that. I had flunked out of school and ended up joining the Army because I needed a new solution.
And by the way, you seem like a guy, we've talked about it off the top. Your personality is contagious. You got great energy. You're determined. You're driven. So you're like, okay, we can't outrun the monster, right?
No.
But it's like, okay, let me go to the arm, like let me go someplace, right? Am I correct there? Like it's like let me go here where I'll be away from it and I can succeed.
Yeah, I ran from me for a large portion of my life. I always thought I would be able to outthink this thing, outwork this thing, outdo this. And when I started working in recovery, one of my mentors who taught me a lot about working with people in recovery, he told me early on, that we bury the smart ones first. And it's because we think we can outthink this thing. And you can't. It is absolutely something for me. I had to have a spiritual solution for this thing. I tried and failed many different treatments, many different sober livings, many different jobs, many different locations. And I felt like, and I knew that I was a fairly capable guy, but man, I just could not get ahead of this alcohol. I could not get ahead of the drugs. It followed me. I would inevitably move locations, start to do really well, get a good job, start taking care of what I need to take. And as soon as things got good, that's when I would screw things up again. I'd find myself at the bar, doing what I do, and inevitably push everybody away from me because when I drink, I'm violent and I'm aggressive and I can't imagine what it's like to be around someone like that. I was like that, I ended up turning into my father, and that was the one thing I did not want to do was turn into my dad. But that's exactly when I drink alcohol, I turn into a monster. I just do. So.
I relate so much when you say that. Then that's the thing about you. I was alcoholic, and I was an addict, but I really did want to do well. So when I would get a new job or a new relationship or a new opportunity, I would kick ass for like the first whatever. But like,
Yeah,
I can guarantee you, the junkie was going to show up at some point. It was going
that's
to
it.
happen. It was just a matter of when, and it usually didn't take that long. When you got into the Army, how long did that last? Did you kind of quickly go through that and on to the next?
It lasted 6 years, but I
Okay.
got in a lot of trouble in the Army because of my drinking and stuff like that. And I'm here to tell you right now, it's hard to get in trouble in the military for drinking, but that's the type of drinking that I was doing. So I ended up getting kicked out of the Army after 6 years, and I ended up. It's kind of the prototypical story. I ended up moving back to small town Western Kentucky, and I became an underground coal miner, and that's where I was introduced to opiates. And so I kind of just moved my addiction from cocaine and alcohol to opiates. And then for 10 years, I functioned fairly well as a hardcore opiate addict. I worked every day, made lots of money in the coal mines. But the natural progression of an opiate addict is kind of you start out with the Lortab Percocet, and then you kind of graduate to Roxycontin and Oxycontin. This was during the Oxycontin craze and it was really easy to get these things. And I made enough money in the coal mines, I could sponsor people to drive down to the pill mills in Florida and bring them back. So but from the outside looking in, I was doing okay. I had a house, I had a truck, she had a car, everything from the outside looking in, but I was destroying myself internally.
Yeah, I want to go through a couple more things before we talk about stable recovery and your recovery. When you're in the Army, was there one story that you can remember that something happened to you where you thought to myself, "Holy shit!" Like I'm going to
Yeah,
get kicked out of the Army for drinking, which is hard to do.
it's hard to do. And there is one story. I was a crew chief on Black Hawk helicopters. So my barracks was right outside the airfield. And unfortunately, we had a bar right on basically on the airport called the 101 Club. And I went over there one night to drink with a pilot a new pilot. He's like, man, come out drinking with us. We drank, I don't know how much, pitchers and pitchers and pitchers of beer. And I apparently, I don't remember, I going back to the barracks that night, I walked into the wrong room, accused the guy of being in my bunk, jerked him out of there, got in a fight. I woke up somewhere outside that morning. I had pissed myself, had to show up in formation and was met by the first sergeant pretty quickly. And that's when that was when I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. The Army made me go to Alcoholics Anonymous. But of course, when I get to those meetings at that time, I'm not one of these people. I'm being made to go, so I don't really need to be here. And I wish I had listened a lot more back then, because I would have saved the next 15, 16, 17 years of pain. But in hindsight, if it hadn't been for all of that pain, for all of the mistakes that I made, the incarcerations, the loss of family, all of it, I wouldn't be as effective at my job today, So I gathered a ton of intelligence on this disease, unknowingly, before I ended up working in recovery and doing what I do today. But it was an overdose in 2018 that led me to my final treatment center and to my final long-term program. And I had just made a decision, man. I'm either going to die or I'm going to get sober. And I didn't really care which one of those happened. I was so miserable. I'd been homeless for 3 years at that point.
And this is the guy who had enough money to sponsor people to go down to Florida to buy drugs and then run them back, right? In the days of the pill mill, like you said. And now you're living outdoors. You have no place to live.
Well, I became an IV drug user, and that's what led to homelessness and led to a real nightmare, But I had, most of my family had passed away at that point. I had burned every bridge that I had, so there were no more couches to sleep on. There were no more, So I ended up on the banks of the Ohio River in a homeless camp in Owensboro, Kentucky. And that went on for about 3 years. I knew the schedule that the gas stations threw their food out, so I could go to their dumpster and fish burnt pizza out of their dumpster to eat. It got, I was absolutely suicidal. I stood on the bank of that river many, many days thinking, man, all I need to do is take one step and it all ends. It's all over. But never really, thankfully, got up the nerve to do that. But ended up making that decision, man. I'm either going to die or get sober. And with that, I made the decision that if I'm going to get sober, I'm going to give it everything I've got. I'm going to push as hard as I possibly can. I'm going to listen to anybody that has something positive to say. And man, it's unbelievable. I came to Lexington. I'd never been to Lexington. Came to Lexington and was introduced to some people that are still in my life today. This circle, you hear about these circles, and I surrounded myself with people that were brave enough to tell me what I didn't want to hear. I had kind of become a master at surrounding myself with people that would do things my way for most of my life, right? And that's what we do. We fix, manage, and control, manipulate people.
So, and then sorted places with lower companions, right? That's it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And those were my people for a long time, and until I finally made that decision and started surrounding myself with people that didn't care to hurt my feelings and tell me what I needed to hear. And that's when the change really started to take place.
Okay, so hold on. So you're living in the homeless encampment for 3 years. That last day, you have that overdose, and you're now as hopeless. I've been there, as hopeless as a person can be. Like on paper, it's like this guy's toast, right?
Yeah.
Now you and I know about that glimmer of hope that is recovery, right? Where if you throw yourself all the way in, your life can get all the way better and beyond. How did you get that opportunity?
It's strange. And it's totally a God thing. And my God's not your God. I've got my own conception of what that is and stuff like that. But I remember being in the hospital, and, you know, I had overdosed before. I had been hospitalized for alcohol intoxication before. And typically when that happens, the staff doesn't treat you very good, and they just kind of put you back together and get you back out, you know, so they can mess with people that have real problems, you know, cancer and other stuff. But I had 2 nurses and a doctor that worked harder than I did to get me into treatment. They bought my bus ticket from Owensboro to Lexington. And I can remember being on that bus, and I was sick. I was, you know, dope sick.
But you're by yourself on the bus.
I'm by myself. And I just, you know, I had lots of thoughts about, you know, how hard I was going to give this thing. You know, I was going to give this thing everything I got. I ended up going to a 28-day program. And typically I had been to 10 plus treatment programs before. Typically I sit in the back, I find a girl that has snuck some dope in, and that's what my treatment looked like, you know. But this time I sat up front. I started listening to some people that would come and bring meetings into the treatment program. And I started asking questions. You know, I mean, I don't want to die. I want to live. Please tell me how to do that. And they all suggested for me to go to long-term recovery. And that's what I did. I made the decision to come to a place here in Lexington. And that was the beginning of my journey. And it was not what I thought it was going to be. I ended up working at a car wash, towel drying other people's vehicles. I'm 39 years old at that point, having to dry off other people's vehicles for tips and stuff like that. Thinking, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And you know, another God thing. I ended up in that place with a guy. That and I still tell people to this day, he saved my life. We got there on the same day. I was scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. I kind of befriended this guy. Come to find out, he could not read and he could not write. And so on the second day of me being there, he asked me, he's like, man, will you please read the big book to me at night? I don't want anybody to know I can't read, but will you please read the big book to me? And so there were many, many days when I'm walking to that car wash thinking, man, F this. I'm not, you know, but the thought would occur to me that, hey, man, Denver's waiting for me at the house to read tonight. So I kept going back to that house just to read the big book to this guy. And you know, come to find out that literally saved my life, because the thought of letting him down was enough to keep me in the program that I was in. And it just turned out he calls me every single day to this day and wishes me a good day and tells me that he loves me. And, you know, he's one of my very best friends. He suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was a child, got hit by a car. And so he struggled with reading and writing. So, and that's what I mean. You know, the right people came into my life at the right time. And I just kind of went with it.
All right. Now this is going to bring us to stable recovery, but one of the reasons I'm so just into this story and into your recovery and stable recovery is because I too, like, I went to rehab for 30 days and they were like, dude, you got to go somewhere else. Like, and I was like trying to fight it tooth and nail. And I ended up going to a halfway house for another 6 months. And that saved my life. And a guy told me once, it's so weird, the things that people will tell you that just hit. And this dude was like, hey man, it's going to be a couple months for the rest of your life. And I remember thinking, like, I mean, I didn't have shit going, right? So I was like, and I had started to follow recommendations, right? And you're listening to other people, the suggestions. You're like you said, reading the book. You're starting to be vulnerable, and you start to get that feeling, like you in Denver hanging out. You're reading the book to them. Like, you can't describe those feelings. They start to fill that void that alcohol and drugs used to fill, and they start to make us feel good like that. You know,
that's it.
And it's amazing. And so you get done at this treatment center, this long-term recovery place. And then where do you go after that? How do you get started in working in recovery and being around horses for a guy who didn't know anything about horses?
I didn't know what I was going to do. I was, you know, I'm graduating this program and I don't have any money. I was paying child support on 4 daughters who are back in my life today, thankfully. But at that time, I was way behind on child support. I had gotten a job, but could not make ends meet. Could not afford my own apartment. And the president of that treatment center, that long-term treatment center, came to me. He's like, man, I'd like to offer you a job as the nighttime house manager. And that came with an apartment. And so for the first 2 years of my sobriety, I worked 2 jobs. I worked by day full time and then at night at that treatment center. And man, there was something about working with others, and the program tells you, and it's so important, but I just kind of fell in love with that. And so I eventually worked my way up to case manager at that program and then became vice president of that program. And I really kind of worked my way up because of these connections I made, and some influential horse people had some family members that needed help. And so I was able to help a couple of these influential horse people with their family members. And that's really kind of how I got introduced to horses. I ended up being introduced to Frank Taylor, who is my mentor and one of my very best friends. He's one of the 4 brothers that owns Taylor Made Farm here in Lexington, which is the largest consignor of thoroughbreds in the world. And he had this crazy idea. He's like, man, I want to bring people out to the farm and teach them how to work with horses. And so that's how we established the School of Horsemanship. That came before Stable Recovery. So I got to go out to the farm and learn how to work with thoroughbreds. And then I got to actually start teaching guys how to work with thoroughbreds. And as I was doing that, I saw the impact that these horses had on these men. And I thought, oh my God, if we could build a housing program around this School of Horsemanship, we could really help some people. And so I started kind of kicking that idea around with Frank. And so about 2 years ago, I borrowed $15,000 from Frank to start the first house here in Lexington. And that was the beginning of Stable Recovery. The very first night we opened up, we had 5 guys move in. All 5 left that night. And I thought, holy shit, we've messed up here. This is not going to be, but now we've grown substantially. I cannot say enough about how the thoroughbred industry has jumped on our back and supported this program. Stable Recovery is different from anything else around. We do not bill Medicaid. We do not do the traditional treatment. You said it earlier, we're a peer-driven therapeutic community. We focus on the individual. You know as well as anybody that it takes very little for a man to make a bad decision, very little. So we try to focus on each individual, find out what it is that could push them in the wrong direction and try to mend that before it happens. And it's just been incredible. It's been incredible.
So your story, I just want to tap into a couple things. First of all, when you were the night manager at a recovery, the place where you went through, describe what that is like, because it takes patience and tolerance, and also you can't take any shit. People think like it's not like you were hanging out reading a book while it was like everybody else was sleeping.
Right. No, and that's really kind of, and I talked about a little bit earlier how my life experience kind of made me really, really good for this. Is I'd get there at 5 p.m. every single night, and I'm sure but every single alcoholic and every single drug addict, whatever problem they have in their life right then is the biggest problem they've ever had in their life, right then. So trying to address those and put a fire out over here and put a fire out over there to keep this guy from making a terrible mistake and jumping out of this place, that's boots on the ground. That was incredible experience for me later on to learn how to handle the different personalities. And, a lot of us have co-occurring disorders, depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, all that sort of stuff. I studied if there was any downtime, I kind of perfected my craft, man. I didn't have a degree to put on the wall or anything like that, but I started reading as much as I possibly could about these different issues that guys could come to. The thing about addiction and alcoholism is it is an equal opportunity destroyer of life. White, black, rich, poor, gay, straight, it doesn't matter.
It does not discriminate
at all, man. So you get a real broad view at what is out there as far as life and different circumstances. So I really, for those 2 years, I worked really, really hard at just kind of being a guy that could listen first and foremost, But on the flip side of that, through the aggression of my father, the military, and my own angst that I had, I was a guy that would kind of get in your face and tell you, man, you're about to make a mistake that is you're gonna end up in prison or a casket, And where a lot of people won't do that anymore, they want to kind of pat you on the butt and hug you and do that kind of stuff. And it's kind of known around here that if you come to Stable Recovery, I will stick my foot up your ass if you're acting in the wrong way, And a lot of guys need that, man. A lot of these treatment programs nowadays, nothing against that, but it's a little soft, And I'm a guy that needed somebody to kind of tell me, yes, do this, no, don't do that. And we do that for a little while here, and then it's wild, man. These guys, after they kind of get acclimated to the discipline and stuff like that, then being a peer-driven therapeutic community, you just kind of watch them take off, and then they're kind of doing it on their own, and then they're holding other guys accountable and teaching them how to do these things and live their life in better ways.
It's back to sports, right? The best teams have guys that police the locker room. Like, so the manager isn't in there every day, or the coach isn't in there every day. You guys give a shit now, and they care.
You got to have your captains, man.
Yeah.
You got to have your captains, and without that, the whole thing kind of falls apart. I tell my staff all the time that if we're doing our job right, there is very little for us to do. The men police themselves. The men, as I was going through treatment and as I was kind of starting out working in recovery, there were 4 things that I kind of focused on that I think are really, really important at helping people stay sober. Lots of different places will get you sober, for 30 days or 60 days or something like that. Where we're missing the boat here is nobody's teaching these guys how to stay sober. And so their structure, discipline, responsibility, and accountability are the 4 things we teach here at Stable Recovery. And you have to master those 4 things if you want to have a chance at learning how to stay sober. You yourself, I'm sure, have some discipline and responsibility in your life. And you've already talked about being accountable. And with that, if you can structure something around that, your day, which is all we have to really be concerned about in recovery, then you have a chance at making it to that pillow. And I tell the guys all the time, man, just make it to the pillow. That's all you got to do. Just make it to the pillow. If you do that, you've won the day. I don't care how fucking bad your day's been. If you make it to that pillow sober, you've won that day. Let's get after it tomorrow.
So you talk about how did you find, because you help these guys build self-esteem, right? But how did you build the self-esteem? Because I love the story that you're now in a position where you have the trust and the faith from Frank, your mentor, where you can say, hey, I got this idea, 15 grand will make it work. We're talking about a guy who was standing on the banks of the Ohio River ready to jump, a complete junkie like myself, who was just at literally, like we talk about in the big book, at the jumping off point. How did you get to a place where somebody's looking at you and you got the gleam in your eye and they can see it and they're ready to invest in you?
I wish I could explain how that happened. Or the day, and I tell the guys in the program all the time, I wish I could tell you exactly what day you're going to get it, whether it's day 275 or whatever it is. I drew a lot of my strength from exactly what you talked about earlier, man. I was filling this void inside of me with positive things as opposed to negative things for the first time in a very, very long time. And I guess after you do that for a long enough period, you start to feel better about yourself, and I felt really, really good about what I was doing as far as helping guys find success in recovery. And that's the other thing is lots of people set out to get sober and then they stop right there. And I'm sure you've met and know dry drunks and stuff like that. If you're not enlarging everything else in your life, then you're going to hit a wall. And inevitably, if you're an alcoholic like I am, you're going to possibly revert back to drinking. So what we want to do here at Stable Recovery is teach these guys how to be successful, not just sober. We want you to find some success. We want you to find something that you can wake up every single day and feel good about what you're doing. That is a huge asset and benefit to anyone's recovery, So waking up every day, and that's where the power of the horse. These guys are rubbing champion thoroughbreds every single day. It's not mom and dad's ponies in the backyard. I mean, We had one in the Derby this year, Honor Marie, that was foaled, raised, and sold at Tailor Made Farm. So these guys, that purpose, that meaning of waking up every single day and doing something positive with your life that you can feel good about, as opposed to stamping car parts at a factory or flipping burgers. Our population is full of felons and full of people that don't have the kindest of backgrounds. So they get a lot of doors slammed in their face. And that's really when Frank started coming up with the School of Horsemanship and I started really kind of diving into the horse industry. There were no barriers. If you show up every single day and you work hard, then there's a good chance that you can advance in this industry. And so that was the biggest thing that I saw. And with that, we've had 4 guys graduate Stable Recovery that are now division managers at some of the top farms in the world. So you can be successful in the horse industry starting ground level. They don't care what your background is. They just want you to show up every single day and work hard. And then if you do that, you have a chance of really doing something with your life.
You talk about the power of the horse. What have you experienced as a mentor now to some of these young guys, and you see them come into Stable Recovery, be a part of this, and really catch it? And a lot of it has to do with the interaction with these amazing, amazing horses.
It's so they're 1,200-pound muscles is what a thoroughbred is. They are literally bred to go fast and to kind of be a little bit aggressive. And so it's trust first and foremost. These guys who have not trusted anybody in their life for a very long time, getting into a stall and trusting that this 1,200-pound animal is not going to kill you while you're in there. It just starts to rebuild. It's intangible, really. It's things that you almost have to see it to understand it, because it's I'm getting guys that are coming from long-term prison sentences or the streets, and they're pretty tough, hardened around the edges. And within 3 days of being in a barn, you'll catch this guy whispering to a thoroughbred in the stall, just about his dad, whatever it is. It's I cannot stress at how powerful that relationship is. And for a guy like me that needed a relationship with some sort of higher power, what I found is early on, I had zero relationship with anything above me. And so it kind of eases the transition into, for these guys that come in here and don't have any faith or any belief in anything, they start to gain that with this animal. And so inevitably, if you're in a program, an anonymous program or something like that, which is leading you to a relationship with something bigger than you, you can start right here with the horse, and it just kind of runs parallel. It's wild, man, to watch.
A couple more things before I let you go. Hold on one second. I got to hit this on the screen. Zach, we're running out of battery here, just so you know. A couple more things. So you are there with these incredible horses, which I can only imagine they cost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
How does that work with getting these guys? Like, is it okay to have I know that when I was just a couple days sober, you don't want me around anything valuable. So how does that work?
Well, it took a lot of hard work on Frank's part, and then a few of us other ones, because nobody was going to let us on their farm around their $1 million horses. Nobody was. And Frank really kind of sold it to his brothers on a 90-day probationary period. He's like, man, I want to try this out. Will you please trust that this might work? And so we did those first 90 days, and it was really successful. And then it's just kind of built upon itself then to where now we have relationships with the largest, most successful farms in the world, from Windstar to Coolmore to Godolphin, Rudin, we have a laundry list of partners that want our guys to come onto their farm and start working for them. And that has blown me away. I never, ever saw that happening. But it's Windstar gave us a house on their farm, which is just incredible. So we got 8 guys, that live out at their farm, and they trust that. And come to find out, they have set the standard for the other workers on that farm that live on that farm. Their house is cleaner than any other house. They show up more consistently than any of the other workers. So it's just been, man, it's been unbelievable.
You talked about the first couple of days, you'll see a guy, whispering to a horse. That's not the kind of stuff that you see even, and we're not here to talk shit about treatment centers. It's one of them saved my life, but
Right.
but this sounds like a whole different deal. Like, and
It
it's
is.
a lot different than sitting out in the yard smoking cigarettes with some guy who was telling you about how many times he rolled his car.
That's
So
it.
what is the difference there?
Exactly what you just explained, and I'm not here to talk shit about treatment centers or
Yeah.
recovery programs, but unfortunately, recovery has become a business. It really has. And so with that, you get a lot of institutional type situations where guys, they throw you in a place, they lock the doors, they sit you in a group, all of this stuff. One really powerful aspect of stable recovery is the power of choice. We don't lock our doors. These guys can sign out and go anywhere in Lexington that they want to go. So allowing them to make a good choice every single day is a big part of our program. So they learn very quickly how to live sober, as opposed to, again, getting locked in a place and getting sober. Here you're learning these life skills along with, and with that, we have accountability partners and stuff like that. So if you are in kind of a shady spot or in a tough spot, you've got somebody there to say, hey man, no, we're doing something different here, and so we had an instance Friday night where I don't allow energy drinks here. Anything mood and mind altering, we don't allow here. And two guys were walking back from a meeting, and a guy bought an energy drink, and his brother told him, he's like, man, no, we don't do that here. And that's the power of this thing, man. So we've got a guy that's a month sober helping a guy that's 3 days sober, and it just kind of builds upon itself. And, so it's just really special as far as that's concerned.
What's one of the examples that jumps out to you that you can share? Like one of the miracles of stable recovery that you've seen go through there. You mentioned the 4 division managers, but if there's one you can put your finger on.
There's a guy that is near and dear to my heart. We'd been open 2 weeks when he got here, and he came in and he had just gotten done with a 10-year prison sentence for methamphetamines. He'd been homeless like me. He lost his mother to cancer like me. And he just came in here and he did everything. So my big thing here is maximum effort. I don't care if you're cleaning a toilet or rubbing a horse or whatever it is. You put effort into anything and everything that you do. If you do that, when you lay down at night, nobody can take that away from you. You know that you've done your best at anything that was asked of you that day. And he lived like that. And now he's been kind of become the poster child of stable recovery. Keeneland magazine just did a big article, and he's on the cover of it. And he's one of the division managers here at TaylorMade, and he absolutely loves what he does. He absolutely gives back to this program every chance that he can get. His life is just completely different now, man. And he went from having absolutely zero hope to being the guy that spreads hope. And that's only been a couple of years now. And so I'm super, super proud of that guy. But he's not the only one. We've graduated 8 legacies, which a legacy is someone who's completed 1 year of stable recovery. All 8 are gainfully employed in the equine industry, and all 8 are still sober. So that's a very big deal for us.
Well, it speaks to the power of what you guys are doing, and also I'm just my experience is long-term recovery, and that's what worked for me. And I think there's something so profound about that commitment and the day-to-day, and just having to relearn. Last thing, what's it been like for you you were this guy who we talked about, hopeless like myself, and now as I'm talking to you, you got a gift. I'm thinking, man, thank God he got sober, because I see what you're doing to help all these other dudes. Like, what is that like for you? How do you stay on the beam? How do you continue to stay grateful and, not get, and I'm not saying you're getting cocky, but just too worried about all these guys. And because you get caught up in that stuff, it can affect the sunlight of the spirit coming through you onto other guys.
Well, I have to avoid ego first and foremost. That is a big part for most alcoholics. We all have this, they say we're egomaniacs with inferiority complexes,
yep,
and that's absolutely me, man.
Yeah.
But I try to, remain humble. I work with a sponsor every single day, and I still, man, I catch myself. I'm not from Lexington. I'm not from the horse industry. I get to drive on to this incredible horse farm every single day. to help other men try to learn how to recover from, and that is not lost on me, man. I should be dead or in prison. I absolutely should be dead or in prison. And so I remember the pain first and foremost. I remember what it was like to hear a jail cell close behind me. I remember what it was like to eat food out of a dumpster. I remember what it was like to stand in line at a soup kitchen. And I don't want to ever forget that, man, because what, we try to teach these guys, we want them to gain more so that it becomes harder to want to lose. Does that make sense? We don't want them to lose what they've gained. And that's absolutely my life, man, is I get to, wake up every single day and all I have to worry about is going out to this incredible horse farm and how am I going to help so-and-so today? And I keep it very simple like that, man. I don't want to, it's not complex at all, man. It's about extending your hand and saying, man, I did it, so can you. And just providing those few moments of hope because, inevitably, at some point during the day today, we're going to have a guy that's wanting to give up or run out of here or something like that. And so, being able to kind of be on the front lines every single day. I never thought I would ever work in recovery. I've been a soldier and a coal miner my entire life. I didn't know anything about this, but come to find out, it was absolutely what I was made to do. And I will never, ever lose the gratitude for that, man. I get to wake up every single day and do what I love. And for a guy that broke the law, hurt every family member he, could ever hurt, there are days where I feel like I don't deserve this, and that's where I have to remind myself that for some reason, I've been granted this gift to do things that, the things that I do. And that's not lost on me at all.
What's anything you want people to know about Stable Recovery that we didn't cover today? I know you got the Washington Post coming. I know you got big things happening there. It's an amazing deal you have. Anything you want people to know about it?
Sure. I mean, it's open to anybody, man. We vet guys pretty tough. You have to have the willingness to want to change your life. Again, this is a very difficult program. We don't slouch in our chairs. We make eye contact when we talk to people. We shake hands. You're going to learn how to live your life in a different sort of manner than what you came to us for. And so it's very, very difficult. But it's absolutely possible. And for those that do well here, it's a chance to change your life. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you got a gift, Christian. I appreciate you spending time with me, dude.
I appreciate you having me, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. I'll send you, this will probably go up like tomorrow or Wednesday, and I'll send you a link you can share with folks.
Please do, man. Let's stay in touch. I'd like to talk more.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much, Christian. I was there for I do football and basketball. I announce games, and so I was there for Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky last year. If I come back, dude, I'm going to text you. I would love to come meet up or go see the
Dude, you got to come check it out.
Yeah.
I'd love to show you around. It's incredible. I'd love to show you around.
Yeah, Lexington's awesome. I mean, I've only been there once, but it was beautiful.
Yeah. It's a great spot, man. Yeah, definitely let me know, and I'll show you around.
All right, Christian. Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it, brother. Have a good day.
You got it, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.